Greetings, bloggers, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of this week's vlog. We're into Autism Awareness Acceptance Month, whatever you do, as I said yesterday. If you follow me online, whether it's, you do awareness, acceptance, light it up blue, puzzle piece, River Infinity, whatever it is you do, and however it is you honor, you are welcome here. And just to give a brief introduction of myself, I'm autistic, of course. I've had autistic tendencies all my life, being formally diagnosed in 1998 at the age of 13. I'm a middle-aged man now, living life, have an independent life, been living on my own for over 7 years, been employed in the community for over 16. So here we are, we're living life as best as we can. It's Autism Awareness Acceptance Month. Like I said, it's every day in my reality, but we're here living life to the fullest. And it hasn't always been that way, doesn't always seem to be that way. And there has been many times in my life where there has been doubt and, misperception of myself, the way I see things differently, or how I see things in a different light or not in a light that should be. That's here nor there. We're working on that. I always say it's always about the small things, but it's always, how we're still learning, even as I become middle-aged and still learning and growing as an independent autistic adult and learning how to navigate life despite its challenges and barriers that it brings to the table. Uh, you know, that being said, one of my main tagline, if not one of the few, is embrace differences. And, being as a page on autism and mental health, we are here, I am here, and I share my story, but I don't only share my story and I don't only reflect on my story. We are here to embrace the differences in everyone, and even as that can be very well be the case, not all of us on the autism spectrum are the same. There are no two people that are the same. Not everybody has the same footprint, way of thinking, way of being. We may be similar, but we can be also very unique and very different in our own ways. The same can be said for anybody with a disability or a mental health challenge or anything of the like, whether that is visible, invisible. It's not our place as people in this world to judge that. That is for experts and people who live their life as they are. That also being said, autism itself is what it is in one person. It is their life to live. It is their experience. It is their choice as it is willing to be shared with them, how they choose to share with others, how those that um, care for them see things on their side of the table. I personally, I see things from both sides just because of how I experienced my life, how I understood the life of two loving parents that have fought for me tooth and nail just to make sure that I had the quality of life that I deserved. And while I understand that not everybody has that opportunity, or may have had a discounted or disvalued life and their autism journey, it doesn't mean that we push those voices that at least I don't push the voices of those who cannot advocate or those who cannot speak or those who don't know those that they care for well, because a few years ago I was in, and even even a few years ago I was in that situation where I couldn't see things for what they were. I couldn't understand for what they were, and it set me up in near danger a few times. And if it wasn't for the grace of my parents, or the grace of those who saw me for my struggles or understood that I do struggle, it would be a very precarious and unwanted situation for me because of my lack and unwillingness to see things as they are, as they were. Then I do apologize in the tensing there. But we carry on, we live life, and I guess that's why I personally see both camps in the autism community. Those that can't that feel they need to advocate for themselves, or feel that you know the advocacy work should come from the autistic people themselves, and then those who feel that they need to advocate for the person that they're caring for or support because they too have, a lived experience in it and a worthy weight of it. They're the ones that are dealing with the barriers, the challenges that are brought forth, the needs of making sure that the individuals who have higher support needs are cared for. They have the dignity and the respect and value that they need. And they're living the life too. They're staying up at night. They're walking the walk just as much as the person is. And unfortunately, we're still, even though it is 2026, we are still in a world where, voices of people, of marginalized communities, such as those that are autistic and those with mental health challenges, aren't always heard, respected, valued, or accepted for what they are, or even credible. And I wrote that in a blog post yesterday on my blog for World Autism a Day. I feel sometimes, even though there may be our own reasons for why we're not, doing something right or whatever, or something may not be, we're not always, credited for what we really feel, or we're never given the credit that's due because, we're seen more as the illness or more as the disorder than what we are as a human being that is worthy, valued, respected, and so forth. That is what it is. And unfortunately, there are many systems, whether that's, funding systems or mental health systems or, you know, criminal justice systems or law systems that still, don't value the voice of autistic people or people with mental health challenges or disabled people. It's sad, and unfortunately, I've seen it way too many times. So it is where the both sides of the table need to be respected and honored. In that same vein, it takes us as people who, such as myself, who have low support needs, to be willing to understand, accept, honor, not only those on the autism spectrum with high support needs, but those with all challenges in the world. And, seeing that even though we have our own walk to carry, they too also, regardless of what their challenge may be, have their own walk to carry. And you never know what somebody in this world is going through anytime you see them out in public or just out online or whatever. You're only seeing a glimpse of what you see. You're not seeing the whole picture. And you don't know the whole story. You don't know what they've gone through. You don't know what they're going through. It's, everybody has their own barriers, everybody has their own challenges, everybody has their own dance to dance and their own deal to deal. It's just the way it is. And, it's for them to share and or not to share. And, you work your way through it, but it's also, being willing to accept and understand others for where they are in this world, what their challenges are, embracing those challenges, not calling them out, not bullying them for their challenges, not wanting to make them feel less than, um, make them feel like you are on a higher pedestal than somebody else. That was a challenge for me. And I had to learn how to accept everybody, regardless of their disability, regardless of the challenges that are faced, in this world, that we are all human beings. We are all worthy and deserving of respect, dignity, honor, um, just the basic human rights of the world. And, just because things are harder for not only them, but for us too to manage in our own capacity does not mean that we discount them, we make them feel less than who they are. We bully them, we emotionally abuse them, we ignore them, whatever that may be. We learn as we grow in ourselves, at least as I grown in myself, to accept and embrace their differences just as much as I have embraced mine. And it can be challenging. I won't deny that fact. But it can be still, even, and I'm a middle-aged man, that it is still a work in progress, but it doesn't make them any different than myself for the challenges that I too experienced, because I have once been there. I may have been in a different light. Things may have been different for me, but it doesn't give me a pass just because I've improved my life so greatly and overcome challenges and am thriving more than somebody else to put others down or make others feel less than or bully people or emotionally or whatever type of abuse you may think, just because they're not up to my caliber, or they may not be able to live in the world that I live in, because there can be times that I can't live in the world that is a challenge, and I am also learning to accept that more, as life has evolved. From years ago when I was first diagnosed, we didn't, it would look different to maybe wear a pair of headphones and walk down the streets of a town, or just be out there with the headset on. And with today's technological advances, like having Bluetooth capabilities and playing streaming music, of which I'm very grateful for, you know just being able to have those capabilities to be able to thrive in a world that is often challenging for myself and many, many others, and that that is what we need for survival. And while we may need that for survival, it's also respecting others when they seek us, want to be our friend, or want us to be there for them, or feel their sense of wanting to belong in a world that is often shielded from them, or where they are made to feel excluded or less than, despite their challenges, their differences. Whatever anybody is experiencing in their own way, it is never acceptable to belittle someone, or, make someone feel less than, or bully, or, or manipulate, or abuse someone just because, they're not like me, or they are challenged, like, or not challenged in the same way that I am. It's we all experience our own challenges in life, even if we are neurodivergent or neurotypical, or even have a disability or not. Sometimes those disabilities, again, are visible, sometimes they are invisible. And that is not all. When we see things, out in the public, that we want to think about this not right or not fair, or we think people are taking advantage. Sometimes, as much as it can be to let that filter come off and say what is on our mind, it is not our place to make that judgment. It is also, with the understanding that there may come a day in this world where we may need to use those things, or we may need the assistance, the accommodations, the things that, we come to need just because, life changes. And, also over the last few years, I have seen that also, and how my family's life has changed. Um, and how things, that we would have never have done are now a part of reality, a part of life. And it's embracing that, it's understanding that it's not cheating the system, it's doing what we need to do with our own validity and our own reason without living in fear of judgment or the stares or, you know, what people are thinking about what people think. Because people are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to think what they're going to think, and they're going to judge what they're going to judge. And sometimes it does take that Teflon skin to learn to live with things as they are, learn how to embrace things for what they are, whether that's in ourselves or in others, and that we have to navigate a world with people that we may not even see eye to eye on things, or that they may not live the life that we expect, or that, they can have moments where they may stress us out or make us feel a certain way about things. But ultimately, if we have the ability, if we have the skill set, it is up to us as human beings that have the power or seek to have the power to learn how to filter the things that hurt us, the things that stress us, the things that would bring us undue stress, undue burden, and, bog our mental health down because, after all, our mental health matters too, just as much as our physical health. And, it's learning how to cope with the challenges, learning how to understand, yes, we have to learn how to manage lives with others that may bring a challenge for us, may be stress for us, but, it's making others feel just as welcome as we would want to feel welcome, and respecting, honoring their differences, their needs, their accommodations, their way of communicating, their way of making it in this world that, just like myself or anyone, can be challenging for them as it is for me. And it's not worth, the cruelty, the bullying, the nasty comments, the nasty behavior, or the emphasizing, or the belittling, or any of those things that make somebody else feel horrible for them just wanting to be what they're doing to thrive or be in this world that is just as challenging for anyone, but can be more challenging for those who have to learn how to live their own sort of independence and be as independent as they can be, and still they can have struggles, still they can learn. Everybody has a different walk of life, everybody has a different way of thinking, a different way of being. And, it's learning how to manage myself and caring for myself while understanding that they have their life too, and that's perfectly acceptable. So I want to thank you for listening today. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video, tap that notification bell if you want to hear more, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. If you're on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, X, um, TikTok, all at Dustin's Dynasty. You can find all the links to everything, that my podcasting platforms, my socials, my email sign up, all of that at Linktree under Dustin's Dynasty, with that Linktree/Dustin's Dynasty. And if you want to see my website, that is www.dustinsdynastyusa.com. I want to thank you for listening today. Um, Remember, you matter, you are loved, you are enough, you are worthy, you are valued. Um, have a happy weekend, happy Easter, happy Passover to those who celebrate, or happy Ramadan. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good weekend, stay safe out there, and bye for now.